Me, I've been, CEO most of the years since I was 26 years old. Therefore, I think I have more executive experience than most people who run for this job. I spent the last 3.5 years in the private sector, which is long enough for it to teach you something. It'll be more like 5, but it's not becoming 7. And I have a path to victory, and I'm not sure that my friend does. That would be my compare and contrast there. With regards to downsizing our criminal justice system, the quixotic thing you have to start out with is that in recent years, states like Texas and Georgia have moved further faster than many states led by our party. What has happened in those states is that you literally have gotten, and I was involved in several of them, the activists in both parties to do an in-run around the moderates in the middle. And because those governors came in as activist governors, backing of the Tea Party, they were willing to play ball. So we got South Carolina to 1-1 on crack versus powder, when the U.S. Congress, run by Democrats, won about 18-1. Texas, as of 2010, had never shut down a prison in its history. In its history, is now on path to shut down 12.
I'm sorry, so you're saying the activists
on the left and the right.
And then what was the right's point of view?
Right's point of view. So the interesting thing, right, when you dig into that, excuse my hubris there earlier, but the interesting thing when you look into that is that the Tea Party, on the issue of criminal justice reform, you have the Christian evangelicals who are doing prison ministry, and they know just what human carnage we have committed in this country. How many families we've destroyed, how many women's lives we're ruining, not just men's lives, how many children we're forcing into foster care, because we don't just, even if their churches only service the white inmates, we have the most incarcerated white people on the planet. We have 5% of the world's people, 25% of the world's inmates. And when you come from any type of ministry, your mind is blown. That's one group. Next group are the libertarians, who've never quite understood this ever. You have those two kind of pillars in the Republican world. The fiscal conservatives are willing to listen. And for them, it's sort of like Grover Norquist, right? And Grover and I agree on exactly one issue, which is downsizing the prison system. He looks at a state budget, and the penal budget is like this magical crystal. Like everything else they can cut, and they can never cut. Yeah, well, yes. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I believe in social rights. But the reality is that there's a great blueprint there. It starts with, frankly, just looking at what actually works. One of the things that we know, for instance, is that additional education, dollar for dollar, is 5 times more effective than additional incarceration. And that when you do probation, one size fits all never works. You're going to give too little attention to the killers and too much attention to recovering addicts, who really would do better at recovery, let alone finding a job, if you eased up a little bit. And so you just got to focus on what actually works. One thing I'm all about, and again, is because I've had family members die from gun violence, is we've got to be very, there's no reason why Baltimore should have a lower homicide case close rate than the national average, which it has had for years. And there's no reason why in most American cities in the last 5 years, at some point they had a major backlog in opening rape kits. We have to be absolutely serious about going after violent criminals. And at the same time, we need to treat addicts like addicts. And the two things complement each other well. Like my grandfather was a probation officer, was in law enforcement in Baltimore for 30 years. He would always say to me when I was, getting too fancy as an inspiring young criminologist, So law enforcement is like anything else. If you're doing one thing, you can't do something else. You know, and if we're treating addicts like criminals, guess what? We're not paying enough attention to murderers and rapists, and that they should get our full attention. Yes, ma'am. So then we'll wrap up.
So you mentioned, I mean, you've been talking a lot about like drug abuse, and I think in Maryland, heroin has been an incredibly big problem. I know John Delaney recently had his opioid thing in Hagerstown, actually. So I used to work actually with McCullough Homes, and I know how intense, but intense heroin abuse is in Baltimore City. And now I'm out here in Hagerstown, and I can see it out here too, but I feel like it seems like causes or what's continuing it seems almost different in certain ways and similar in others. But I know our current governor just declared a state of emergency in trying to attack this issue, but I'm wondering how, like, what does that look like? What is the strategy for kind of dealing with this? Because it seems sort of insurmountable right now.
It starts with dealing with addiction as a health problem. You have to start there. You have to de-risk people coming in and saying that they need help. You've got to make sure that when they're ready to go to rehab, there's a place for them. And you've, frankly, got to stop distracting police, and get police officers out of the business of being social workers. And actually get social workers back in the business of being social workers. We need more to deal with. We also have to deal with the criminal enterprises behind it very seriously. The bus that we saw in Baltimore, the prison guards, who were working essentially under the direction of the Black Guerrilla family, can only be the tip of the iceberg in what we're doing.
I know, because it comes up all the time. I feel like every couple of years there's some crazy buzz videos and...
I mean, the heroin trade in Baltimore is one of the city's top employers.
It's insane.
Right. And so I believe in a both-and approach. I believe in you've got to deal with addicts as addicts. I think, frankly, you have to deal with most low-level drug dealers as addicts, as most of them are. That's what they're doing. And you've got to focus your attention when you have an illegal trade that's financing very violent organizations on actually taking down those syndicates and those organizations.
Can I ask a follow-up
Sure.
question to this? Reentry community
Yep.
we have here. And so we're talking about folks who are trying to...
I mean, he's going to literally pull me off. So this is the last question. Right?
People trying to reestablish their lives and becoming cyclical and repeat offenders,
Yes.
you know, with part of that being the fact that they can't get back into society. There
Yes.
are no jobs, there are no training programs. They try very hard, solid trying, earnest trying, and
Yes.
end up back in the same rut because there is no way off of that treadmill. How do you address that community?
Ban the box.
The first thing to do absolutely is ban the box. And when I was president of the NAACP, one of my proudest moments was convincing Walmart to ban the box. And I also sat with Governor Schwarzenegger when he decided to ban the box. But that's just the beginning. It just gets you to the. If people don't know what the box is this check form on an application. Have you ever been convicted?
Oh, yes.
And what it means is your application ends up in the trash. If you don't know how it got there right after September 11th, when there were a bunch of stories that there were potheads and baggage claims. Literally, that's how it started. Felons and baggage claims, because of the felonies, it was marijuana related to the story that really blew up. Again, jokes aside, I never really worried about pothead hanging my past, they move slower. But the reality is that felons and baggage claims is what got us this box. Life wasn't that great 20 years ago, 15 before September 11. We actually have to fundamentally get back to having tough conversations in our society about one, how is it that we have the shortage of welders and truckers, things like that. Why aren't we training those guys? Right, yes. Yeah, no. Absolutely. Fastest growing cohort. They also are the least likely of the two to be discriminated against. I can go through all those with you and devote pages of research. But fundamentally, whether somebody is reentering or whether they're coming out of our high schools and our community colleges and our colleges, we need to have a clear path that leads up to a job. Any job training that we're doing, the fact, for instance, that we have private industries in our prisons that compete against industries on the outside. So you literally have men who are creating furniture, being told that they're being trained for a job, and then you talk to people who want to produce furniture, say, in Maryland, and say, well, there's no way to compete against the factory in the prison. Right? It's completely backwards. It's completely backwards. We also have to understand that oftentimes the barrier is as simple as literacy. When we have men doing 20 years and women doing 20 years in our prisons, come out just as illiterate as the day that they went in. And we fundamentally, I mean, right now, I'd say